Richmond's housing dream just became a financial nightmare. The collapse unfolding across this Metro Vancouver suburb reveals something far more devastating than falling prices. It exposes the total disintegration of a market that once thrived on billions in foreign capital, now left bleeding as international buyers vanish. Projects collapse into receivership, and local families who believed in the dream find themselves trapped in debt they can't escape. The numbers tell a story city officials can no longer spin away. Richmond's benchmark condo price has crashed to $720,400, down 5.8% in just 12 months. The market now carries a terrifying 12 months of unsold supply, more than double what's considered healthy. Active listings have surged 27% while sales have collapsed. In a single month, only 125 condos changed hands across the entire city, a figure that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago when bidding wars were routine. But Richmond's crisis runs deeper than statistics. This city, more than any other in Metro Vancouver, built its modern real estate market on a foundation of foreign money. That foundation just crumbled, leaving homeowners buried in the rubble. If you're watching this, you know this story is real, raw, and potentially life-altering. You know that someone has to expose the truth about this collapse. Smash that subscribe button right now. It costs you nothing, but every subscription tells me you want more of this content. If you want the facts, the data, and the emotional reality of a market betrayal, then hit subscribe, and let's get back to the truth. Richmond's destiny was sealed decades ago. It served as the primary landing zone for wealthy buyers from Hong Kong and mainland China, drawn by the airport, the established community, and its reputation as a safe harbor for offshore capital. This wasn't normal investment, this was a complete market takeover. Non-resident buyers accounted for 7.8% of home purchases in Richmond, nearly double the regional average. At the market's peak, some neighborhoods saw foreign ownership rates approaching 8%, far above the tiny 3 to 4% typical elsewhere. The money flowed so fast and so freely that it completely reshaped the city. More than 80% of mortgages on luxury homes in certain areas went to buyers with non-anglicized Chinese names. The city's demographic shifted dramatically, becoming over 41% Chinese-speaking, with entire commercial districts catering almost exclusively to Mandarin and Cantonese speakers. The flood of capital pushed prices to levels that local incomes couldn't possibly justify. But nobody cared. The money kept flowing, an endless river of cash. Developers built towers specifically designed for overseas investors, small units optimized for price per square foot, marketed in Shanghai and Hong Kong before a single shovel hit the ground in Richmond. Pre-sales to overseas investors were the key that secured construction financing. The local buyer was an afterthought, the foreign buyer was the foundation. Richmond enjoyed 3 decades of unparalleled prosperity, but that prosperity was built on a foundation of sand, resting entirely on the assumption that the government would never, ever turn off the taps. It felt like the golden age, but it was just a beautiful life funded by capital that never truly belonged here. The city banked its entire economic future on this money. Then the tap was suddenly, ruthlessly, slammed shut. And what followed was an economic execution. The policy reversal was not a warning, it was an economic execution. In 2016, British Columbia fired the first shot with a 15% foreign buyer tax, later raised to 20%. The impact was immediate and brutal. Foreign buyer participation in Richmond sales plummeted from over 8% to under 2% within 18 months. But the real devastation came in January 2023 when the federal government enacted the Prohibition on the Purchase of Residential Property by Non-Canadians Act, banning foreign nationals from buying residential real estate in major Canadian cities. The ban, originally set to expire, was extended through January 2027. For Richmond, the foreign buyer ban wasn't just policy, it was the death of the market's engine. The city had spent 3 decades positioning itself as the primary destination for Asian capital. Developers designed projects with foreign buyers in mind, knowing that those pre-sales were the only way to secure financing. When that capital disappeared overnight, the financial lifeblood of Richmond's real estate market simply ceased to exist. The data reveals the scope of the panic. Chinese investment in Canadian real estate, once measured in billions annually, has effectively evaporated. Chinese investors who once flocked to Vancouver and Richmond have now redirected capital to Southeast Asia, particularly Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia, where prices are lower and investment restrictions are minimal. Thailand, once a distant second, has now permanently surpassed Canada as a real estate investment destination. The reversal is complete, total, and likely permanent. The moment has passed. They are not coming back just because Canada reopens its doors. They found a better deal, and Richmond's developers are now left holding the bag. But the financial capital wasn't the only thing that fled. The people who kept the city running are also gone. The population dynamics paint an equally bleak, desperate picture. British Columbia recorded a rare population decline in the second quarter of 2025, losing 2,154 residents, the largest quarterly drop since records began in 1951. This is a seismic event in demographic terms. The decline was driven almost entirely by a collapse in temporary residents, particularly international students and foreign workers. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, British Columbia lost 11,742 study permit holders. Think about that, 11,742 students gone. These are the people who were concentrated in Metro Vancouver, particularly in cities like Richmond, which had built entire neighborhoods and countless investor-owned condos around student housing. The federal government's plan to dramatically cut study permits and work permits, the very programs that had fueled Richmond's population growth, has worked too well. The students who once rented condos by the thousands, supporting investor cash flow and keeping vacancy rates low, are gone. The city's entire real estate market was built on two pillars: foreign buyers and temporary residents. Both have now disappeared completely. What remains is a city with thousands of condos designed for a buyer pool that no longer exists, a ghost market waiting for a wave of renters and buyers that will never come. The implications for developers are catastrophic. Without the pre-sale investor and the rental demand, the projects that were once surefire hits are now literally falling into the hands of the courts. And the perfect symbol of this citywide failure stands right at 5768 Minoru Boulevard. The Minoru Square project stands as the most visible, heartbreaking symbol of Richmond's collapse. Located just one block from the Canada Line station, this was meant to be a transformative mixed-use community with 429 residential units across 3 towers. The developer, Thind Properties, launched pre-sales during the high-water mark of real estate optimism. They expected the foreign buyers and investors to line up. But as interest rates climbed and the foreign capital vanished, pre-sales stalled. By May 2023, Thind Properties was forced to inform buyers that they were pausing the project and returning all deposits. The numbers simply didn't work without the foreign capital driving pre-sales. The financial mess is staggering. According to court documents, Thind Properties owed KingJet Mortgage Corporation approximately $75 million on the Minoru Square project. This debt was cross-collateralized with other troubled developments, creating a devastating web of financial obligations that proved impossible to untangle. In December 2024, the courts appointed a receiver for Minoru Square. The fully entitled site, once valued at $63.2 million, is now listed for sale. But who would buy it? Local purchasers can't afford the units that would need to be built. Foreign investors are banned. Temporary residents are leaving in record numbers. The site, once seen as prime real estate in one of the hottest markets, has become a symbol of the industry's catastrophic miscalculation, a beautiful, massive piece of land trapped in a frozen market. The Minoru Square receivership is not an isolated incident, it's part of a broader wave of developer insolvencies sweeping across Metro Vancouver. Real estate bankruptcies jumped a terrifying 43% in the second quarter of 2024. Major firms like West Group Properties laid off 12% of their workforce. Rennie Group, the region's largest real estate marketing firm, cut 25% of its staff. The dominoes are still falling. For Richmond, the construction pipeline has effectively frozen. Developers are sitting on the sidelines, unwilling to commit capital to a market with no visible path to recovery. What remains is a quiet desperation, a waiting game as the market plunges into the abyss. And that abyss is exactly where the price, inventory, and psychology of this market now reside. The price collapse in Richmond mirrors the broader Metro Vancouver trend, but with a unique level of despair. The benchmark condo price decline of 5.8% year-over-year masks deeper drops in specific neighborhoods, particularly those once defined by foreign investment. The sales to listings dynamic paints the bleakest picture of all, with active listings up 27% and sales volumes collapsing. The market now carries 12 months of unsold inventory. In a healthy market, that figure sits around 3 to 4 months. At 12 months, the market isn't just soft, it's fundamentally broken. Days on market tell the same story of seller agony. Properties that once sold within a week now sit unsold for 34 days or more. For desperate sellers, each passing week chips away at their negotiating position. Buyers know they can wait. They've watched prices fall month after month. They see the inventory piling up. They understand that sellers are increasingly desperate, so why rush to buy today when the property might be cheaper next month? This is a psychological collapse, a fundamental shift in power from the seller to the buyer, fueled by deep-seated panic. Richmond's detached home market faces similar pressures. These expensive homes, once purchased by wealthy foreign buyers, now sit in a market with no natural succession of buyers. The foreign buyers are banned. Local buyers earning Richmond median incomes cannot qualify for mortgages on multi-million-dollar homes. The market exists in a state of suspended animation, transaction volumes collapsing even as asking prices remain stubbornly high, held up only by the seller's desperation to avoid a loss. The spillover is region-wide. When buyers see thousands of unsold units across Metro Vancouver, they lose confidence that Richmond can somehow escape the broader collapse. When they read about receiverships in Burnaby and massive layoffs, they adopt a wait-and-see approach. The fear is contagious, and the investor collapse amplifies this regional contagion. Investor participation in the Metro Vancouver condo market has plummeted from 50% of buyers to just 7% in early 2025. For Richmond, which relied even more heavily on investors, this collapse has been nothing short of brutal and fatal. But the real, raw pain of this market is only truly understood when you look at the human cost. The human cost of Richmond's collapse is mounting, raw, and deeply relatable. Consider the family who immigrated to Canada in 2020, drawn by the community and schools. They scraped together a down payment, stretched their budget to the limit, and purchased a 3-bedroom condo in a new tower near Richmond city centre for $850,000. They believed they were building a foundation for their children's future, relying on the classic lie, real estate always goes up. Now their condo is worth perhaps $720,000, maybe less. Their mortgage balance sits at $765,000. They are underwater by $45,000 before accounting for the cost of selling. Their equity has vanished. The next blow is their worst. Their 5-year fixed mortgage rate, locked in at 1.9% during the pandemic, is up for renewal. The new rate is 5.3%. Their monthly payment, which was $3,100, is jumping to $4,200. They've already cut every expense they can, no vacations, no restaurants, no new clothes. They are barely making it now. After renewal, they won't make it at all. They've called their lender, but refinancing isn't possible without equity. Selling means bringing tens of thousands of dollars to closing, money they absolutely do not have. They are trapped, watching their Canadian dream crumble under the crushing weight of debt and a decision that seemed safe just 4 years ago. This isn't just a financial setback, it's a total loss of hope. Or consider the small-time investor who bought 2 Richmond condo units in 2021 as a retirement plan. Each unit cost $700,000. He expected they'd be worth $900,000 by the time he retired. The rental income was supposed to cover most of the mortgage. It hasn't worked out that way. The units are now worth $650,000 each. He's lost $100,000 in total equity, and the bleeding continues. The rental math has collapsed. He collects $2,400 per month in rent on each unit, but the total costs, mortgage, taxes, fees, add up to $3,100 per unit. That's a $700 monthly loss per unit, or $16,800 annually he must cover. He's been draining his savings for 2 years, hoping the market would turn. It hasn't. His retirement savings are gone. His credit cards are maxed out. He's considering walking away, letting the bank foreclose, destroying his credit, but ending the agonizing monthly hemorrhage. It's not what he planned, but he sees no other way out. Stories like these are multiplying across Richmond: the elderly, the immigrants, the hopeful, all trapped in the prison of debt left behind by the foreign money that fled. Richmond's crisis reveals the ultimate fragility of a real estate market built on speculative investment rather than local economic fundamentals. For 3 decades, Richmond thrived as capital flowed in from overseas, creating an illusion of unstoppable prosperity. Developers made fortunes. Homeowners felt wealthy as paper gains accumulated. Nobody questioned what would happen if the capital flows reversed. Now Richmond has its answer: the capital is gone. The investors have fled. The population growth has stopped. The market that once thrived on billions in foreign money now faces a future where local incomes, local employment, and local demand must drive prices. And those fundamentals paint a bleak picture. The gap between current prices and what local residents can afford is unbridgeable without a further, agonizing collapse in valuations. The speculative psychology that drove the boom needs to be replaced by rational, income-based valuations, and that will be a long, painful, multi-year process. The only question now is who will survive the final wave of pain, and who will be left paying the price for the financial betrayal of the city's housing dream.